My name is Elaine W. Perez, 32 years old. I live in San Diego, work in operations management for a logistics company, and my life is structured enough that most people think I'm boring. Early gym, long work days, quiet nights, the kind of routine that keeps my head clear. My boyfriend Nolan is the opposite in the way that feels exciting, until it starts feeling exhausting. He's 29. We've been together just under 3 years, and he loves big moments, big plans, big aesthetics, especially when there's an audience. We were supposed to leave for Bali in 5 days for a 2-week trip he planned obsessively, down to outfit photos, spa schedules, and restaurant bookings, like the vacation was a production he was starring in. About a week before the trip, I got sick. Not the kind of sick where you want sympathy and soup, the kind that makes your body heavy and your brain slow. Fever, aches, fatigue, the whole thing. I went to urgent care because I'm not dramatic, but I'm not reckless either, and the doctor told me it was viral, rest, fluids, and avoid a long flight for a bit. Sitting in the parking lot, still wearing the paper wristband, I texted Nolan what the doctor said. I expected concern. I expected at least a, "Are you okay?" What I got was irritation wrapped in entitlement. "If you're sick, stay home," he texted. "Don't ruin my vacation to Bali." Then he added that he'd already picked outfits, booked spas, told everyone he was going, and that I always get sick at inconvenient times. That part stuck because it wasn't true. I don't always get sick. I just don't fake wellness to protect someone else's mood. I stared at the screen and felt something settle inside me. Not anger, clarity. The way he said it wasn't a momentary stress response. It was a ranking. Bali first, me second, and my body was an inconvenience to his timeline. I replied with one word. Okay. Not passive, not defeated, just done explaining myself to someone who'd already decided I was the problem. Nolan had access to one of my cards, not as a favor, but because we traveled often and it made logistics easier. Flights, hotels, deposits, food. We discussed it and agreed, and we settled shared expenses monthly. That system worked because trust existed, or at least I thought it did. After his message, I sat on my couch, still in my work clothes, and thought through what staying home actually meant, not emotionally, logistically. That's where things moved fast. I opened my banking app and froze the card he could use. Not closed, not disputed, just frozen. A clean, reversible action that protected me from being financially tied to a trip I was no longer welcome on. Then I opened my email and removed myself from the itinerary. The Bali resort booking was refundable within a window, so I canceled it, and the refund went straight back to my account. The spa packages weren't refundable, but they were booked under my name, so I canceled those too. I didn't announce any of it to Nolan. I wasn't trying to teach a lesson. I was separating my finances from a plan that had just been clarified as his, not ours. An hour later, my phone started buzzing. Missed call, then another, then a text. "Why isn't my card working?" Then, "This isn't funny." Then, "I'm at a boutique, Elaine. Fix this." I muted my phone and laid down, and for the first time in 2 days, I slept. When I woke up, I had more missed calls and a voicemail that went from confused to angry in 30 seconds. He said I was sabotaging him. He said I was controlling. He said I was ruining everything over a cold. I didn't respond. By evening, the knock at my door wasn't polite. It was coordinated. And when I opened it, Nolan wasn't standing there. His family was. When I opened the door, Nolan's parents, his aunt, and his younger sister were standing on my porch like a delegation sent to negotiate a ceasefire. Not one of them asked how I was feeling. Not one of them asked if the doctor said I'd be okay. His mother's first question was, "Where is Nolan, and why aren't his cards working?" I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. That alone shifted the energy. It wasn't subtle, but it was intentional. I wasn't inviting an audience into my home for something that wasn't a performance. His father stood with his arms crossed, posture stiff, like this was a financial dispute. His sister paced while checking her phone. His aunt wore a look of theatrical disappointment, the kind people use when they think you've broken some unspoken social contract. "He's downtown," his mother said sharply. "He's humiliated." His card kept declining in front of his friends. "I removed myself from the trip," I replied calmly. "That includes my finances." They all stared at me, like I'd spoken another language. His mother laughed, not amused, but incredulous. Couples don't do that to each other. I nodded once. Couples also don't tell each other not to ruin their vacation because they're sick. That landed. Not loudly, but it landed. His father finally spoke. Do you understand how much money has already been spent? Yes, I said evenly. It was my money. That's when the temperature changed. His sister stepped closer and said I was ruining Nolan's mental health over a flu. His aunt told me I was being dramatic. His mother said a real woman supports her man's plans. That was the moment I understood this wasn't just Nolan's entitlement. It was a family system. He didn't invent it. He inherited it. They asked me to unfreeze the card so he could calm down and finish shopping. They said we could talk later, like adults. I told them no. The word seemed to shock them more than anything else I'd said. It wasn't shouted, it wasn't emotional, it was just firm. His mother's expression hardened. He loves you. You're punishing him. I'm not punishing anyone, I replied. I'm opting out. His father warned me I was making a mistake. His aunt muttered something about pride. I repeated that the conversation was over and asked them to leave. They didn't like that either, but they left. 10 minutes later, my phone lit up again. Nolan. I answered this time. He didn't say hello. He started yelling. Said I'd humiliated him. Said people were staring when his card declined. Said I blindsided him on purpose. I let him speak without interrupting. I've learned that silence makes people reveal more than shouting ever could. When he paused, I said, I did exactly what you asked. What? You told me not to ruin your vacation, so I removed myself. That's not what I meant, he snapped. There it was, the pivot. He explained that obviously I was still supposed to pay, that couples support each other, that I could rest at home and still be a good girlfriend. He said I was being dramatic over a fever. I asked him one question. If the roles were reversed, would you stay home with me? Silence, then deflection. That's not fair. That was my answer. He tried bargaining next. Just unfreeze it for the weekend. We'll talk when I get back. Then came the warning. My family is furious. You're making enemies you don't need. I'm not making enemies, I said. I'm setting boundaries. He laughed bitterly. You're bluffing. Okay, I replied, and I hung up. An hour later, the doorbell rang again. This time it was Nolan. And he wasn't alone. He had a suitcase. I saw the suitcase first through the peephole, a large carry-on, hard shell, the same one he used for boys' night trips with his college friends. Except now it wasn't a trip, it was leverage. Nolan stood there with his jaw tight and his tote bag over one shoulder, rehearsing whatever version of events he thought would reset this. I opened the door, but didn't step back. He didn't wait to be invited in. He rolled the suitcase past me like we were checking into a hotel we both owned. We need to talk like adults, he said, already irritated, already framing me as the unreasonable one. My parents said you're being emotional. I closed the door slowly and turned to face him. Take your bag back outside. He blinked. What? You're not staying here. He stared at me like I'd just violated physics. Elaine, I need stability right now. You embarrassed me. You froze my card in front of everyone. I separated my finances, I corrected. You told me not to ruin your vacation. I listened. He scoffed and ran a hand through his hair. You're twisting this. I was stressed. I didn't mean you shouldn't support me. Support doesn't mean bankroll, I replied. His tone shifted then, softer, almost coaxing. You know I didn't mean it like that. Bali was important to me. I just needed you to not complicate it. I almost smiled at the phrasing. Not complicate it. Like my body had been a scheduling error. You were sick, he continued. Fine. Stay home. But why take it this far? Because you showed me exactly where I rank, I thought. But I didn't say that out loud. Instead, I picked up the suitcase and rolled it back toward the door. That's when the tears started. Loud. Sudden. Dramatic. He said I was abandoning him. Said I was cold. Said this was proof I didn't love him. I didn't match the volume. I didn't defend myself. I just opened the door and placed the suitcase outside. The neighbors had started noticing by then. I could feel eyes through blinds. Nolan noticed too. The crying stopped almost instantly. His voice dropped into something controlled and reasonable. We don't need an audience, he said quietly. Let's talk inside. No, I said again. He stood there for a long second, recalculating. Then he stepped back onto the porch. You're overreacting. Maybe, I replied, but I'm consistent. He left after that. No slam, no dramatic exit, just a tight jaw and a rideshare summoned on his phone. I thought that would be the last escalation. It wasn't. By the time I woke up the next morning, Nolan had already reframed the story. Vague posts about betrayal, about partners who financially control you when you try to grow, about how some people can't handle independence. He didn't use my name. He didn't need to. My phone buzzed with mutual friends asking if I was okay. A few implied I'd gone too far. His mother left another voicemail saying I was punishing her son for having ambition. I didn't argue, I didn't comment, I did something else instead. I documented everything. Screenshots, timestamps, his exact words about ruining his vacation, his threats about telling people what kind of woman I really was. I emailed it to myself and archived it. Calm, methodical. Then I received the text I knew was coming. "I'm at the airport," he wrote. "If you unfreeze the card now, we can pretend none of this happened." There it was, the reset button. The version of reality where I swallow the insult and fund the fantasy. I replied once, "Enjoy Bali. Your things will be boxed when you return." He sent 20 messages in under 5 minutes. Anger, insults, accusations, then fear. I muted the thread. 2 hours later, his father emailed me. Polite, measured. "Let's discuss this woman to man." I didn't respond, because by then, something had become very clear to me. This wasn't about Bali. It wasn't about money. It wasn't about stress. It was about expectation. He expected access. He expected compliance. He expected support without consideration. And when that disappeared, the outrage wasn't about love. It was about leverage. Bali didn't fix anything. I know because he texted halfway through the trip complaining about hotel deposits and tour confirmations not going through. He didn't say he missed me. He didn't ask if I felt better. He said, "This is humiliating." That word again. Humiliation wasn't my illness. It wasn't the distance. It wasn't the breakup. It was the loss of control. And that's when I knew this wasn't temporary. Part 4. Clean endings. Bali didn't last the full 2 weeks. 3 days in, Nolan's tone changed. The photos stopped. The filtered beach shots disappeared. The text shifted from angry to strategic. "We need to talk when I get back. This is spiraling out of control. You're making this bigger than it has to be." I didn't answer. When he returned early, he emailed instead of texting. That was new. No emojis, no sarcasm, just a short message asking when he could come pick up his things. I gave him a time. Saturday morning. Broad daylight. I packed everything carefully. Shirts folded, shoes paired, chargers wrapped. I even printed an inventory list and taped it to the largest box. Not because I owed him that level of precision, but because I refused to give anyone the chance to rewrite the ending as chaos. He arrived 10 minutes early. His younger brother waited in the car this time. Nolan looked tired, tan from Bali, but not relaxed. He tried to smile. It didn't reach his eyes. "Hey," he said softly. "Your things are here," I replied. He stepped inside just far enough to see the boxes stacked neatly by the door. His gaze lingered around the apartment like he was cataloging what he'd lost access to. "Is this really how you want to end 3 years?" he asked. "This is how you ended it," I said calmly. "I just followed through." He exhaled sharply. "You're acting like I cheated on you or something. I said one thing." "You said enough." Silence stretched between us. He shifted tactics again, the way he always did when control slipped. "I was stressed. You know that. My family pressures me. The trip meant a lot to me. You couldn't just support me?" "I did support you," I said, "for 3 years. His jaw tightened. "So you're just done?" "Yes." He looked at me like he was waiting for me to flinch, to soften, to negotiate. When I didn't, his voice turned colder. "People are starting to ask questions. They think you overreacted." "I'm not running a campaign," I replied. "I don't need votes." That irritated him more than anger would have. Anger would have meant emotion. Emotion meant leverage. Calm meant final. He stepped closer. "You really think you're better off without me?" I didn't hesitate. "I think I'm better off without being disrespected." That's when something in him shifted from frustration to resentment. "You always thought you were above me," he said quietly. "You just hid it." "No," I said. "I just didn't argue every time you minimized me." He stared at me like he wanted to say more, but couldn't find a version of the story where he was both right and still in control. His brother came to help load the boxes. They moved quickly. No more speeches, no more threats. Before he got in the car, Nolan turned back one last time. "You'll regret this," he said. Maybe he expected that line to land like prophecy. It didn't. After they drove away, I closed the door and stood in the quiet. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just still. The kind of stillness that feels earned, That night, I canceled our shared cloud album. Not angrily, just methodically. One less digital thread tying me to someone who saw me as optional. Over the next few weeks, the narrative shifted again. Nolan posted vague quotes about betrayal, about people who pretend to care until it's inconvenient. A few of his friends commented with inside jokes that made it obvious who the villain was supposed to be. Then something interesting happened. The applause thinned. A mutual friend called me privately. "I don't want to get involved," she said carefully, "but he's telling different versions of the story to different people." That didn't surprise me. What did surprise me was how little it mattered. I didn't rush to defend myself. I didn't screenshot his post or subtweet. I simply kept living. Work, gym, quiet dinners, space. One afternoon, a coworker pulled me aside. "You okay?" he asked. "I saw something online." "I'm fine," I said, and I was. A week later, Nolan tried one last maneuver. A long email. No insults this time, just nostalgia. Photos from our first trip together. Reminders of everything we built. A line about how strong couples push through misunderstandings. I read it once. Then I replied with something he had never heard from me before. This wasn't a misunderstanding, it was clarity. He didn't respond. Months passed. No calls, no new accounts, no surprise visits. The silence was clean. Looking back, the trip to Bali wasn't the breaking point, it was the reveal. The moment he said, "If you're sick, stay home. Don't ruin my vacation." He didn't just prioritize a trip. He prioritized his comfort over my well-being, and he expected me to agree with that hierarchy. The cards were never the story. The freeze wasn't revenge. It was alignment. He told me not to be there, so I wasn't. People think endings have to be explosive to be real. They don't. Sometimes they're just quiet decisions made without yelling, without theatrics, without one last dramatic speech. He wanted peace without accountability, support without reciprocity, presence without respect. I gave him exactly what he asked for. No drama, just distance.